Welcome. I hope your coffee is warm. Late Friday, I asked everyone what decks they have that they really can't finish building, that they want some advice on. And Teddy Holthouse said, I have a Scarecrow deck list. No changelings, commanded by the Reaper King for years. But unfortunately I am not skilled enough with deck building to make it decent gameplay wise within a flavorful lane. Would you have thoughts on that? Yes. Now, the Reaper King, I think, is the best Scarecrow around. The Reaper King is weirdly costed. It costs 5 mana. In some ways, it has all 5 colors of mana, and then you could either choose to pay one of the colors or pay 2 colorless mana. Now this also means, which is a really strong suit, that the converted mana cost of this card is 10 colorless mana. And it means that you can get it out pretty soon. This is the core of your deck for Scarecrows. But it does need you to get a bunch of lands of the right colors out onto the battlefield. The Reaper King says, and the most important ability is, whenever another Scarecrow comes into play under your control, destroy target permanent. Could be lands, but who could fault you because you are the Scarecrow deck. It also says Scarecrow creatures get +1/+1. Now this is not the best ability for Wooburg Commander, so you really need it to be about the land destruction basically. You could also be a controlling deck that destroys all the other things first, but that will take some time. Now there are some ways to destroy everything except for your own creatures. Of course, in this deck we will need a lot of Scarecrows. Ones I really like are Scarecrow, a 3 mana Scarecrow that says for 1 mana sacrifice a Scarecrow, draw a card. And we love sacrificing Scarecrows in this deck. For 4 mana, return target artifact creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which could be Scarecrows. Her puppets bring joy to the truly depraved. This really sets the tone for our deck. We have Scuttlemutt and Oasis Gardener, both 3 mana Scarecrows that add a color, a mana of any color. We love that in this deck. Scuttlemutt also says target creature becomes the color or colors of your choice until the end of turn, but I don't really know what we're going to do with that. And I think a little bit of the kicker in this deck is the fact that we are working with a bunch of artifact creatures, because all of the Scarecrows, I think, are artifact creatures. That gives us a little bit of an extra strength. For example, Portal to Phyrexia, a 9 mana artifact. You might say, what are we going to do with it? Well, mill it, we hope. This is a really expensive artifact that should win you the game. When it enters, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures and we will destroy the rest, no worry. And at the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Now we want to get this back with cards like Scrap Mastery, a 5 mana sorcery that says each player exiles all artifacts cards from the graveyard, then sacrifices all artifacts they control, then puts all cards they exiled this way onto the battlefield. We love that in this deck, because we need to get all of those Scarecrows back onto the battlefield. Now this doesn't really work with your commander because you don't want to sacrifice it into the graveyard, of course. But this works really well with the rest of the deck. And one thing that would work, for example, with the commander as well, as the Ready Scrap Savant, a 4 mana legendary planeswalker that says sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact from the graveyard to the battlefield. Now we could do some huge artifacts like Portal to Phyrexia, but we could also do a Scarecrow and destroy another permanent. We have more ways to return our artifacts. For example, Master Transmuter, a 4 mana card that for 1 mana you can tap to return an artifact you control to your hand. You may put an artifact from your hand onto the battlefield. Switching around your Scarecrows and putting them onto the battlefield again and again is really powerful in this deck, and we need to do that more often. Open the Vaults does this for all of your artifacts and enchantments, but mostly your artifacts are imported here. And Wake the Past says return all artifacts from your graveyard to the battlefield, they gain haste. You would say 7 mana, 6 mana, that's way too much, but we have a lot of ramp in this deck and we need a lot of ramp in this deck as well. Now this is a theme I call wait, there's more. Yes, there are many ways to copy creature types, and the fact that we are playing all 5 colors, well, we need to use that. For example, Molten Echoes, 4 mana, choose a creature type. When a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield, create a token that's a copy of it. It gains haste and you need to exile it at the beginning of the next end step. But it entered the battlefield, so that works for our commander. Reflections of Ligiara, 5 mana, choose a creature type. When you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. Again, copying our scarecrows. And we need to do that because, well, we need more of them if they aren't really strong on their own. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is there will be an update on scarecrows soon. With the set of Duskmourn, there will be a lot of new scarecrows probably entering the battlefield for this commander deck. Maybe even a new commander, so you might need to change things around. And cards like these or themes like these aren't really evergreen for a deck like this. But they are fun, and for now, if you want to play it like this, I think this is the way. Lastly, Quantum Misalignment, a 5 mana sorcery that says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it isn't legendary. And not being legendary is really good for us, because this means for 5 mana we can copy our commander. And having 2 of them onto the battlefield means we get to destroy even more permanents. And our opponents will be reaped out of the battlefield, I would say. It also has rebound, so you get to do this again. Now, how do we win? Multiple ways actually. Marionette Master is one I really like. 6 mana, Fabricate 3. Whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. And we probably will be giving it 4 power, so that means we get to ping our opponents for a lot of life. Another way is Mirrodin Besieged, because we will have a lot of artifacts in our graveyard. Mirrodin Besieged is the 3 mana enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, this is the only part we will read, the direction part, draw a card, then discard a card, then if there are 15 or more artifact cards in your graveyard, target opponent loses the game. We'll need to do this for every one of your opponents, but I think this should be enough for you to slowly reap the battlefield again of your whole opponents. And Time Thief, a card I really love for how weird it is. It's a 2 mana artifact that you can just tap to take an extra turn after this one. Seems really strong, but you do need to sacrifice 5 artifacts, and we hopefully will have that every time. Definitely with all of the other return all of your artifacts to the battlefield cards here. Board wipes in this deck are sometimes really strong. Organic Extinction, really expensive, but again we have a lot of ramp, and it has Improvise, saying your artifacts can help cast a spell by tapping them for 1 colorless mana. It says destroy all non-artifact creatures. Almost all of our creatures are artifact creatures, so our creatures will survive and our opponent's creatures will not survive. Same for Phyrexian Scriptures. It says on the second part of it, destroy all non-artifact creatures. Again, we're the only ones surviving. This one is only 4 mana. And for 6 mana, a card that does it immediately, destroy all non-artifact creatures. We love this effect and we will put it into our deck as much as we want. Removal, of course, really normal ones like Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares, a really flavorful one, of course. But one that you probably haven't seen as much, Dispatch, a 1 mana instant. Tap target creature. Doesn't seem like removal, but if you control 3 or more artifacts, you exile that creature. And we will have 3 or more artifacts. I believe in this. Now ramp, as I said, we have a lot, but we also have the big ones. Shard Convergence. 4 mana, search a library for everything except for a forest. So a plains, island, swamp and a mountain. Refill them and put it into your hand. So not ramp in this way, but you will have all of your lands that you need. We have explosive vegetation, a 4 mana sorcery that says search for 2 and put them onto the battlefield tapped. And of course cultivate, the famous one. Search your library for 2, put 1 on the battlefield and 1 into your hand. So also the fixing here is really important. One other sort of effect is having our scarecrows enter the battlefield again. Like with cards like Ghostway, a 3 mana instant that says exile each creature you control. Return them to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of your next end step. Meaning you do need to go to your end step again, but your scarecrows will all enter the battlefield and have you basically board wipe your opponents again. This is really a control deck now, think about it. We have Airy Interlude, a really spooky one again. It's 3 mana instant, exile any number of target creatures you control, so you get to choose. Some of them will stay around, and you return them under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step again. And another round, which will be really flavorful. Let's say what it does first. 3 mana and XX, so you need to put 2 mana into it for every X. Exile any number of creatures you control, return them, and repeat the process X more times. So for 3 mana you do it once, for 5 you do it twice, for 7 you do it 3 times. Why will this be flavorful? For the Duskmourn set, there will be doors opening all around the multiverse. And I think this door, with a very airy flavor text when you think about it, is a door to Duskmourn. But that's just speculation. Next up, we have weird things that work with our command. Imposing Grandeur, 5 mana sorcery. Each player may discard their hand and draw cards equal to the greatest mana value of a commander they own on the battlefield or in the command zone. Meaning, you will get to draw 10 cards. Of course, your opponents with big commanders get to do the same, but this is a great effect for us that will have us discard our hand, and maybe your opponents will get 0 cards. Imskir Iron Eater is an 8 mana, wild expensive things you'd say. Legendary demon, but it has affinity for artifacts. Costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control, and we will have a lot. When it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is half the number of artifacts you control, and we will have a lot. And for 4 mana, you sacrifice an artifact, and Imskir deals damage equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value to any target. That will be a lot. And we have Majestic Genesis, an 8 mana sorcery. Again, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the greatest mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. You may put any number of permanent cards from among them onto the battlefield and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Let's hope you get destroy 10 permanents from this, or more maybe, with some of the other effects that we have. There are many ways to make artifacts cheaper. For example, Ursa's Incubator, a 3 mana card, an artifact that says choose a creature type when it enters, scarecrows of course, and creature spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast, meaning that your 3 mana scarecrows aren't as expensive anymore. The Foundry Inspector, which makes them 1 less to cast, and the Helm of Awakening, which does the same. There are so many effects of this that probably your scarecrows will be free. Let's hope. And there are ways to make your scarecrows more impactful, other than the +1/+1 they get from your commander, of course. There's, for example, the new one, Cranial Ram, a 2 mana equipment that says equipped creature gets X power, where X is the number of artifacts you control. One of them will be really big. There's the Illustrious Wonderglyph, a 5 mana 2/2 that has Ascend, and when you have Ascended, other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2, meaning your scarecrows will get really big. And there's the Antiquities War, a 4 mana saga, with the last one being artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5. So the base power of your scarecrows will be really big as well. And for the first 2 story chapters, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your library and put an artifact from among them into your hand. And you get some card draw as well from this one. Of course, there are some classic artifact synergies that I've put into the deck, like Unwinding Clock, to untap all of your artifacts during each other player's untap step, and one cards that I really like with that, like Liberator and the Shimmer Mirror, that say you may cast artifact spells as though they had flash, or you may cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash, meaning that you get to play your scarecrows on each of your opponent's turns, destroying all of the creatures that they want to attack you with. And that is the beauty of this deck. And that was it for today. I want to thank you for watching, and I wish you a nice day. Bye.